She didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She just sat quiet, centered, and still. In the second row of courtroom 2B, the bailiff asked her to move. She didn't. The clerk repeated it. She didn't blink. And when the judge entered, the woman stayed exactly where she was. In the front row, usually reserved for family only. But this wasn't her family. This wasn't her case. And by the end of the day, everyone in that room would learn why she belonged there more than any of them. Thank you for being here. Sometimes, the smallest stand makes the loudest sound. Today's story is one of those, quiet, powerful, and worth remembering. If it stays with you, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. And if you'd like to walk with Elijah Boone again, subscribe. We'll keep your seat warm. Now let's take a closer look at what really happened. The brass plaque outside read, Courtroom 2B, Harlan County Courthouse. No cameras, no journalists, just the way they liked it. Inside, the room smelled like paper and old wood. The ceiling fan spun lazily. The flag drooped beside the judge's bench. And the people filed in the way they always did, slow, habitual, and certain they already knew how it would end. It wasn't a big case, disturbing the peace, resisting removal from public property. No weapons, no drugs, just a woman who sat where she wasn't supposed to sit and didn't stand when she was told. Tamara West entered alone. No lawyer beside her, just a plain navy blouse, dark slacks, and shoes that looked too worn to be court-appropriate. Her hair was pulled back tight. Her eyes didn't dart. She looked forward, not defiantly, just steadily. She took a seat in the front row of the gallery's second bench, not far from the jury box, closer than expected. The bailiff frowned. "Ma'am, that row S for family of the victim." Tamara didn't move. "I'm not here for them," she said. "Then I'll need you to move back." She didn't speak, she just stayed. Judge Lydia Mays entered, late 40s, composed, the kind of woman who never raised her voice, not because she didn't get angry, but because she didn't need to. She surveyed the room, paused slightly at Tamara, but said nothing. For now. At the prosecution's table sat Franklin Hale, County District Attorney, charcoal suit, pocket square, and a voice that always sounded like it was half smiling. He leaned over to his assistant and said, "She looks stubborn, that'll play well." The assistant nodded, but kept watching Tamara. The clerk called the case. State of Kentucky v. Tamara West. Tamara stood, no attorney, no defense team. Just her. Franklin Hale raised a brow. "All alone?" he asked. Tamara met his eyes. "Not exactly." He smiled, didn't press. But in the back row, Elijah Boone looked up. He entered 15 minutes early, sat where no one noticed. Wore his usual coat, kept his hands folded, but his eyes had already read the entire courtroom. The judge began. "Ms. West, do you understand the charges brought against you?" "I do. You have the right to an attorney. The court can appoint one if you—" "No need." Judge Mays studied her. "Then I hope you're as prepared as you look." Franklin stood. "Your Honor, the facts are simple. The defendant refused to comply with signage at a public memorial." She seated herself in a section reserved by the city for a veteran's family. When asked to move, she created a scene. Pause. She disrupted the dignity of the event, and then resisted lawful removal. Tamara said nothing, didn't flinch. Just watched him speak like she'd seen men like him her whole life. Hale continued. "This case isn't about race. It's about respect. And when a citizen, regardless of background, violates order, we respond." He turned. "Isn't that fair?" The jury didn't nod, but they didn't frown either. They just watched. The judge looked to Tamara. "You may respond." Tamara stood. Her voice was even. "I didn't yell. I didn't carry a sign. I didn't curse or block the way. I sat in a chair, facing a flag." Pause. "And I didn't move. Because the man that chair was for once gave up his seat for me." A murmur moved through the room. Hale raised a hand. "Objection. She's giving testimony with no supporting record." Judge Mays replied. "She's allowed to speak." Tamara looked around. "I'm not the one on trial here. The system is, the assumption is." She turned to the jury. "Ask yourselves why my silence caused more fear than any act of violence. In the back row, Elijah Boone slowly stood. No one noticed at first, but then the creak of the wooden floorboards silenced the gallery. He stepped forward, walked past the clerk, past the attorney, stopped just behind the defendant, and said calmly, "I was there that day, and the chair she sat in had her name on it long before any of you did." Franklin Hale smoothed his jacket, walked slowly toward the jury, like a preacher who knew he didn't have to raise his voice to turn a room. "Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't about chairs." He smiled. "Let's not get poetic." He turned to Tamara. "Ms. West, is it true you were removed from the memorial by 3 uniformed officers?" "Yes." "Did you comply?" "No." "Did you cause a delay in the ceremony?" Tamara paused. Then, "They paused because of their reaction, not mine." Franklin nodded, stepping closer. "You didn't have a permit. You didn't notify the city. You didn't carry identification linking you to the veteran being honored." She stared at him. "I carried memory." He turned to the jury. "She speaks in riddles, but let me offer facts." He raised a printed document. "Tamara West, formerly enlisted briefly in the U.S. Army but discharged after 1 tour. No medals, no formal commendation. Not listed on any local registry of veteran service organizations." He dropped the paper on the table. "So tell me, where exactly is her right to disrupt a formal ceremony?" Tamara stood silent, still, but her fingers curled slightly, only slightly. Franklin leaned in. "She wants you to believe this is about dignity, that she's fulfilling a promise." He gestured toward Elijah Boone. "And that this gentleman, whoever he is, can vouch for her with cryptic remarks and sentimental stories." He looked at Elijah. "Sir, do you have military credentials?" Elijah looked up, reached into his coat, removed a small, creased leather ID, walked forward, handed it to the judge. She read, brows lifted, slowly. She passed it to Franklin. He read, then paused. "Sergeant Major Elijah Boone, 1st Recon, 3 Tour. Bronze Star with Valor, Dagger and Danker designation." He cleared his throat. "My apologies." Elijah said nothing. He took back the ID, returned to his bench. Franklin continued, but with less confidence. "We respect his service. But sentiment isn't law. The issue is whether Ms. West had legal, designated reason to sit in a family-only section." Tamara's voice came low but firm. "I wasn't there for the ceremony. I was there for the man behind the name." Franklin smirked. "Which man?" Tamara looked up. "Private First Class Reed, killed in action 2010. The gallery hushed. Franklin flipped through his file. "PFC Reed, yes, but you weren't listed as kin." "I was." "Then why were you there?" She turned to the jury. "Because he died saving my life." Franklin scoffed. "That's not in any record." "Of course not." She folded her hands. "Because no one writes down the things that matter." He raised an eyebrow. "And what exactly happened?" Tamara looked to Elijah, then back to the jury. "He took my place in a convoy. I was injured. He rode instead, and when the blast hit, they found his tags in my gear." A pause. "My mother was sent the letter. They thought I was dead." Gasps in the room. Franklin froze. "You're telling this court you were presumed dead?" She nodded. "It was corrected, quietly. No one wants to admit the record was wrong." Judge Mays leaned forward. "Is there corroboration?" Elijah stood again, voice calm. "There were 2 survivors. I was one. The other passed last year." He looked at the judge. "I remember the day they put the wrong tag in the wrong envelope. And the woman who lost a son she never had, because another one gave up his seat." The courtroom went silent. Even Franklin Hale, practiced, polished, could find no response. Just the sound of the ceiling fan above, circling the weight of a mistake never written down, but never forgotten. Franklin Hale didn't like losing control. He knew how to sway rooms. He knew how to make juries smile while tightening the rope. But now, even the air felt like it was listening to someone else. He tried one last approach. "Your Honor," he said, "even if we take her word, even if there was a tragic mistake in the battlefield records." He turned to the jury. We are still dealing with a violation of municipal order. She refused to move. She disrupted protocol. Pause. In law, intent is not defense. Disobedience is disobedience. Judge Mays didn't respond right away. Instead, she looked at Tamara, then at Elijah, then at her own hands. "Ms. West," she said quietly, "when you sat in that row, what were you hoping to prove?" Tamara looked forward. "I wasn't trying to prove anything." "Then why sit there?" Tamara inhaled. "Because if I had moved, it would have confirmed I didn't belong." She looked at the judge, and that would have dishonored him. A quiet settled, heavy, undeniable. Then Elijah stood again. But this time he walked forward, not rushed, not asked. He reached into his coat, pulled out something folded, held it up. It was a flag, old, faded, tri-folded. He placed it gently on the witness stand. "This," he said, "was given to me by mistake." Pause. "It belonged to PFC Reed, but for 17 hours the Army thought it was mine." He turned to the room, and for those 17 hours Tamara West was officially dead. He turned to Franklin. "So tell me, counselor, if someone is marked dead, given the wrong funeral, handed a folded flag that didn't belong to them." He paused. "Don't they earn the right to sit wherever the hell they please?" Franklin said nothing. No objection, no rebuttal, no breath. Judge Mays stared at the flag, then down at her own bench. She stood, quietly, stepped down from the platform, walked past the rail, stopped in front of Tamara, then gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "I believe the court owes you a seat." A moment passed, then without any prompt. Every person in the gallery stood. No applause, no cheering, just stillness and respect. The kind of respect no court order could demand. The courthouse steps were empty. The flags had gone limp. The street quieted. No reporters, no handshake lines. Just Tamara and Elijah seated on opposite ends of the same granite step. Neither of them spoke at first. Elijah placed the folded flag on his lap. Tamara stared at it. Finally, she said, "You kept it." Elijah nodded. "For 13 years. "Why?" He didn't answer right away. Then, "Because I was supposed to send it to his parents, to the right hands." He looked forward, "But I never could." Tamara looked over. "I thought the Army handled that." "They tried. But after the mix-up, they asked me to write the personal letter. Said it meant more coming from someone who knew him." Pause. "I sat down to write it 19 times. He smiled a bitter smile. "But every time I tried, I ended up writing to someone else." Tamara tilted her head. "To who?" He didn't answer. She knew. They sat in silence. He placed the flag beside her. She didn't reach for it. She said, "He wouldn't have cared where I sat." Elijah nodded. "He would have sat beside you." Then he added, "Reed told me once, if I die, don't let the Army speak for me." Tamara chuckled. "That sounds like him." She paused. Then softly, "Why were you there today?" Elijah looked out at the courthouse lawn. "I knew you'd show up. I didn't know if you'd stand or sit or disappear." Pause. "But I knew someone would try to erase the part of the story that mattered." Tamara watched a leaf drift past the marble step. "And what part is that?" Elijah looked at her. "That when someone gives up their seat, it's not just about where you sit after." He tapped his chest. "It's about who you become when you finally stop running." Tamara leaned back, looked up at the sky. "I'm tired of running." Elijah nodded. "Then sit a while." She looked at him, then down at the flag. "Will you help me write the letter?" Elijah blinked once, then smiled. "I already started it 13 years ago. The memorial was smaller this year. Fewer chairs, fewer uniforms, no banners, just a line of flags fluttering along the grass and one microphone no one seemed eager to use." Tamara stood alone near the edge. No podium, no name tag, just a folded page in her hand. And Elijah Boone in the distance, leaning quietly against an oak tree, arms folded. A small group gathered. Some remembered her. Some didn't. No one stopped her. She stepped forward, unfolded the paper, and read, "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Reed, I was there the day your son didn't come home. He took my seat, not by mistake, but by instinct. He never asked if I was ready. He just knew I was, and so, without a word, he traded places with me. Tamara's voice wavered just once, then steady again. They say in war, luck decides who lives. But that day I didn't feel lucky. I felt borrowed. For 13 years I've carried what he gave me, and I've sat in silence in rooms I didn't belong in, until now. A breeze moved through the flags. Elijah nodded from under the tree. Tamara continued. He asked us not to forget, so I'm standing here to remember, not just his service, but the chair he left empty so someone else could sit. She folded the page, didn't bow, didn't wait for applause. Just stepped back and sat, second row, far left, alone, exactly where she was meant to be. People didn't clap, they didn't whisper, they simply stood with her and stayed, not out of ceremony, but out of something harder to define, respect. Not every courtroom needs a verdict. Not every protest needs a sign. Sometimes a chair left empty speaks louder than any voice that ever filled it. If this story moved something in you, if you've ever sat somewhere others said you didn't belong, know this. Sometimes the right seat doesn't come with a name tag. Sometimes you carry the name in your chest. Share your story in the comments. There's room here. And if you'd like to walk again with Elijah Boone, subscribe. We'll be waiting quietly for you.